Yeah, thank you for the nice introduction and the invitation for this event. I actually don't know so much about diplomacy. I come from the arts, and yeah, I just dive right into the presentation. If you want to know more about the artist or our projects, I'm happy to give more information about that. So what I'm talking about right now. I give a little bit a little philosophical background about the end of the contemporary in arts and what non-Western cosmologies within that context means, and then introduce shortly what we do at Art is the Place, and yeah, introducing the artists. So yeah, just there are two main thoughts that I want to connect. First, the end of contemporary, and then what that means for non-Western artists or non-Western cosmologies. So the contemporary in art have been a normative position since the second half of the 20th century. It's more or less common ground, and for the first time in 1989 at the Havana Biennale, there was a first open critique of this normativity in the contemporary, and that mainly the critique was that contemporary art is mainly an Eurocentric, has a Eurocentric focus, and yeah, that was the main critique, but still untouched till today is the normativity in the contemporary and the relation that this contemporary or this modernity complex has on the relationship on time. I will elaborate on that further on in my discussion. I will be very brief. It's a complex issue, but mainly you can break it down to very simple logic. I try to give that, and just to have a little reminder, it's not my theory. It was invented or researched by a group of scholars, mainly from the global south, and one of them is Rolando Vázquez, which I met a couple of years ago at the Märzmusik Festival in Berlin, at the Berliner Festspielhaus, and he had a workshop for a week, and I participated in that workshop. It was right on the beginning of starting the agency, so yeah, I was very surprised about his theories, and it fit into my way of thinking, and I wanted to express with this agency or with the art. And yeah, his main theory at the end, I mean his goal, or the goal of this collective of artists and scholars, is to bring an end of this Western dominance on modernity. And he also, I don't go very deep into that, he always, when he talks about modernity, he makes a slash, modernity slash coloniality, because those two go hand in hand. They are both sides of one medal, so to speak. And so mainly the concept of modernity is a civilizational project of the West, mainly Eurocentristic in kind. And what it did, this modernity, it was controlling the present. So what appears as world or as reality was captured or translated through this notion of modernity, which comes out of the West. And it's also, what it also did is it established a relationship to the chronology of time. So the notion of this temporality was that everything what we experience is the now of history. So modernity claims, it's a little bit difficult to explain, but what we can see is that everything that is modern is the presence, is something that is novel, or the rupture, and everything what was before that is relegated to the past. So everything what is in the present is modern, and everything what lies in the past is something, yeah, that lies in the past. And I will elaborate on that further on. And yeah, that is mainly, and I've put some of the artwork of our artists that we are presenting just on the side of the presentation, so you can have a look at the aesthetics that we are trying to bring awareness to. And so I can mainly summarize contemporary or modernity is a civilizational project of the West, and by that it's controlling the message or the how modernity sees the world through this perspective, basically. And what does non-Western cosmologies come or bring into the forefront? It's mainly it comes from decolonial theory, and decolonial aesthetics present a critique to this notion of modernities, to this notion that everything is modern, comes out of the present and is a now of history. By that, it also relegates everything else to the past. I said that, and so the end of contemporary, or basically the decolonial aesthetics, want to transform this notion of the present in modernity by memorial of what has been relegated to the past. So different non-Western cosmologies from the past have to become also into the forefront, but not included into the complex of modernity. I will explain that later on. So what did modernity or the contemporary in modernity do, or what was the effect of it? It negated multiple pasts and multiple histories into oblivion or into forgetfulness. So this cosmologies, you talked about indigenous cosmologies or the native culture, or also part of the Middle East, or wherever you go outside of this modernity complex, they have been relegated to have been erased to some extent. And the decolonial aesthetics wants to bring that more into the forefront, and by bringing an end to the contemporary in modernity, or this notion in contemporary arts. And it challenges also this claim that modernity has on the present, this validity and the claim of totality that Western modern aesthetics have in art. It also goes into this theory into politics or economics, but I want to focus mainly on the aesthetics or in arts here. And so what the decolonial artists or aesthetics don't want, oh, that's a typo, sorry, and what it doesn't want to incorporate the non-Western cosmologies into the notion of contemporary modernity, which happens a lot. Also in the past, you cannot say there's no diversity in the museums or in galleries. There are a lot of shows about African or Asian or Middle Eastern culture, but always through this perspective of the Western modernity. So by that, non-Western cosmologies kind of get included into this complex theory or in this perspective, and by that, there's a danger that this non-Western cosmologies could be erased. So one of the theories of Rolando Vázquez is that through incorporation and translation, there happens an erasure of this non-Western cosmologies or this knowledge. So decolonial aesthetics want to be more or less outside of this modernity and to bring more empowerment, awareness to different ways of knowledge or knowledge production in this kind. So I already said I want to challenge this perspective, and what modernity also did in arts or the contemporary, it functioned as a gatekeeper, as an exclusion of non-Western cosmologies, more or less, and and this is the main critique of decolonial aesthetics or the end of contemporary in this kind. So I also elaborated on that there's this universalism, this hegemony of modernity in arts or in Western arts, and it's very interesting to to see that, because decolonial critique wants to uncover this kind of hegemony, and by that it also wants to open up the contemporary and opening up the world to many worlds, to more cosmologies in this kind. And it has decolonial aesthetics, or the end of contemporary is not a universal way of a truth of some kind. It has no purity aspects. It's just an option to have. It's delinking from the mainstream discourse in contemporary or in modernity, and wants to open up contemporary arts or the modernity to different kinds of knowledge, what has been relegated to the past. For example, this theory is mainly coming from the Americas, from Latin America, where First Nation cultures are more or less fighting for, not for money or capital or something, but more for recognition, and not to be erased from global culture. And the contemporary or the modernity has functioned as some kind of monocultural system where other cultures had been subdued or erased. So my colleague before elaborated also on that. It's more of a macro perspective, and so when I want to summarize it, it's basically opening up contemporary arts to non-Western cosmologies, but from a perspective of empowerment, and not to be included in that modernity complex. And I talked about time and of the presence, that Western modernity has always this notion that the present is the now of history, and everything, for example, there are cultures or non-Western cosmologies who see the past not as the past. It means the ancestral knowledge is in front of us, not behind us, because it already happened. That means it's different for Western or for the contemporary art. It means something that happened in the past became reality or materialized. It ceased to exist on a physical level, but on a metaphysical level, it's in front of us. So we can learn from that experience more. And there's also the Vasquez talks about the modernity, which has always a focus also on utopia, the future, what can happen, but basically what their critique is, it's kind of defuturing, because if you always have the time relation, the temporality in the present, how can you, and don't look back into the past, how can you have a meaningful development or perspective into the future? So he calls about defuturing, and he's more or less, the decolonial aesthetics want to bring the past or the different genealogies from the past to the forefront, so that also the Western world or the contemporary or the modernity complex can learn from that, and not only include non-Western cosmologies because it's hip or it wants to be diverse, because there's also danger in diversity. As I talked before, if you incorporate or appropriate different cultures, then you have a tendency to erase also that culture in some kind of way. And their question is basically what has been lost in the last couple of hundred of years through this system of hegemony of modernity, what kind of knowledge has been lost. And by that, we are also, we as a society or global society, I don't know, or people of the earth or what else, or how we want to define ourselves, have limited options of how we can maybe change, social change, or change our ways of production or ways of thinking. There are different levels or different aspects on that, but basically his concept, which I found very interesting, was the concept of humbling, the humbling of modernity. That means that Western institutions, museums, galleries, curators, I don't know, institutions who are in that complex or working in that field have to listen for the first time, listen to different non-Western cosmologies and to be more or less quiet for 1 second, listen and see what has been done. For example, now there's a huge movement of decolonizing European, I don't know the English word, Völkerkunde museums. For example, there's a big discussion what this non-Western artifacts, what you have to bring them back, or what you're doing, or how the collection should be changed or decolonized. And this notion of humbling of modernity was very inspiring to me also. It was kind of delinking from this logic of modernity or Western modernity, and listening to other worlds of knowledge and genealogies. It's also empowerment in it. So if are we talking over here in the form of diplomacy or peace building, that could be also, I mean, from the art perspective, a way of maybe not repeating history all over again. So this was very interesting for me, and so I did an exhibition in close relation with this community of scholars, and called that Humbling of Modernity, where I tried to curate different artists from all over the world, but mainly from within Western world, but who have a non-Western background, and try to show their art and try to incorporate also this decolonized aesthetics in it. And it was very interesting for me because our agency mainly focuses on non-Western cosmology, but of artists who are from the West. So we basically grew up here in this modernity or in the contemporary world, and maybe this also gives us a different perspective, different to maybe artists who are coming from outside Europe or outside the West, and maybe bring some synergy in this kind of art. So yeah, these are the artists mainly which we are representing. Daniel Arab is a German Lebanese artist born in Tripolis, but has a German father, German mother, and Lebanese father. And Sean Lin is an Afro-American artist from Detroit, who is also half Afro-American and has an Irish lineage. So it's very interesting. He grew up in Burkina Faso and did some very, to me, inspiring and very good artwork. And Hadi Salehi is an Iranian-American photographer born in Iran, and does mainly analog photography. And he sees itself as an image maker, as a painter through the art form of photography. And this show was highlighted by Contemporary End. It's a German magazine focuses more on Africa, but also has a lot of empowerment and decolonial artists included. It's from, I think it's financed from the IFA, the Institut für Auslandsbeziehungen, and this is, I think, then traces back to the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That was one of our main. Oh, what did I do here? Sorry. So how does the presentation come back? Sorry, no, I'm back in it. So what we do at Art is the Place, I talked about that, the theoretical part of it. We mainly want to promote and give a platform for emancipatory, empowering art to different kinds of mediums, photography, painting, and we believe that the current space of time is ready for this kind of new art forms and imaginations, and we want to motivate not only Europeans or non-Western, but everyone, and give and open up the art world or the contemporary art to also, non-Western or let's say immigrant people living also in Germany, because this was my experience growing up in Germany. That when I went to the museum, which mainly came about when I was in school or so. We went with the school to some museums. I couldn't see myself, or the art that was presented, it didn't reflected my way of thinking, or I didn't see people who looked like me in the museums or in the art forms. So I was kind of not excluded physically, but maybe, I don't know, emotionally excluded. So I was thinking of ways how to change that, and started this agency. So that's mainly it. You want to know more about the artist, you can go on the website. We're also opening up a gallery in March at Kudam, and there we want to show more art, more video art, visual art, and we're also always looking for museums who are interested in this kind of way of thinking or this kind of art. And also maybe museums from outside of Europe who are also interested maybe in seeing art that is not always reflected through Western arts, but that's a different topic. And I want to close this presentation with a little video. I don't know how I can show it. Maybe I go back. It's not. I go here, and then you can. This one. How can I?
In F5.
Yeah. So and then. Yeah.
Art is the Place ist ein Zusammenschluss und Künstlerkollektiv von internationalen und Berliner Künstlern, gegründet im Jahr 2016. Wir verorten uns als People of Color mit afrodeutschen, afroamerikanischen, iranisch-deutschen und libanesisch-deutschen Identitäten und sehen uns als kulturelle Diaspora innerhalb der westlichen Gesellschaft. Mit der Ausstellungsrealisierung Humbling of Modernity im Projektraum des Bethanien wollen wir den Künstlern eine Plattform bieten, sich von der Deutungshoheit des westlichen Modernitätsdiskurses zu emanzipieren, ihnen eine eigene Stimme geben und der modernen Kunst andere, vielfältigere Modernitätsentwürfe entgegenstellen und den interkulturellen Dialog aus der Perspektive der Selbstermächtigung führen. Wir wollen mit unserem Kollektiv und den von uns ausgestellten Kunstwerken die Grenzen der Moderne aufzeigen und rebellieren spielerisch, kreativ gegen die kulturelle Dominanz der Moderne. Wir haben keinen Wahrheitsanspruch oder positionieren uns radikal gegen den Modernitätsbegriff des Westens, vielmehr zelebrieren wir die Pluralität unterschiedlicher Kosmologien, welche untrennbar mit unseren Identitäten verbunden sind.
That's it. Thank you. So do you have any questions? Yeah.
First of all, I would like to ask, how is the reception been of the exhibition, for example, that you were showing there? How do you find that it's the people from the West and also Western artists react to it?
I mean, the reaction was positive. Yeah, they liked the.
Questions that came up that were really.
Yeah, the main lesson I learned from this exhibition was the theoretical part was a bit too complicated for the Western audience. Maybe also right now had difficulties to explain it. It's a theory. It sounds very complex if you read it, but you have to more or less understand or feel the theoretical concept, and then it makes sense, and then you understand it. For the Western audience, it's more it's a change of perspective and a change of thinking to understand the concept, because it's nothing new to see non-Western art in European museums or galleries. That's nothing new, but the new thing is to see it from a different perspective, more for humbling perspective, and not of yeah.
To that. If you were going to show this exhibition, for example, in Iran,
Yeah.
How would you deal with the issue of hierarchies within Iranian art?
Yeah.
Some of the motives in your exhibition, they were also borrowing from indigenous art, maybe also from rural areas.
Yes.
And of course, they don't have the same access to the markets, the art
Yeah.
markets, or to the education
Yeah.
that some Iranian artists do, or that are growing up in the West may have, or
Yeah.
in the cities in Iran. So how do you deal with the inequality within the society there?
I'm not an Iran expert, even if I'm have Iranian heritage or lineage. I don't. Yeah, we don't try to get into that too much, because then it complicates. It gets very political and it gets complicated. But what I can say, I don't know very much about Iranian art. Of course, it's a difficult society for artists. That's clear. But what you said, the indigenous motives, or I mean the artist who shows his photography is Iranian, so he grew up there and he travels there regularly, and he also doesn't see himself so much as, I mean, he's an Iranian artist, but yeah, by classifying it as mainly Iranian, then that's always a problem. If you show non-Western art in the West, it's always labeled and then becomes politicized, and it has a more lighter tone to it. It's more about hope, or it's about giving a different inspiration. It doesn't always have to be so heady. Yeah, I mean, Western art has this privilege. Yeah, Western artists, they can show everything and dive into every topic, and oh, it's great. But that's a little bit, yeah, it makes the work complex for non-Western artists. Also, growing up here in the West, to not be included in that, because we are, I mean, I'm German, so even if I don't look German. Yeah, and no, it's yeah, yeah, yeah.
Example. The question is only, how do you borrow from indigenous cultures,
Yeah.
or from cultures without recolonializing them?
I don't know. We try to be sensitive because the artists are from that culture. So I don't see any recolonization.
With the privileged
Yeah.
background and
Yeah.
education system,
Yeah.
which has been partially westernized,
Yeah.
or in a Western system. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there is the danger. I'm not saying you're doing it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's a question which should be raised.
Yeah, of course. No, that's always, we don't claim any universal truth or something. We know that we are privileged, of course, and we don't say we are outside of modernity somehow, but we try to give a different perspective. And to show art, maybe if the only way to say, okay, this is our take on it. Maybe our take on Iranian culture, and but this time, I mean, there's a huge step to recognize that also, and not. I mean, the colleague before talked about traditional and modern. So there's always everything that comes up from out of modernity is modern, and everything else is traditional. So we want to also break up this notion of traditional, which has always this, oh, it's great, but it's traditional, it's not so sophisticated, or I don't know, and what is modern. So we don't include that into modernity, but just establish, how I said in the presentation, opening up the world to different worlds, so that we can have a, and those worlds don't have always to be in total harmony, so to speak. There can be different. Different is good to have a reasonable discussion on different things. That's the only take.
Thank you for this presentation. It's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Also the discussion was a good story, but we can discuss in a coffee room. But
Yeah,
we are
sure.
having a short, like 10 minutes break right now, and then we will